Good morning and welcome to the Heaven Bound Sunday School class at First General Baptist Church in Truman. We're still studying from the book of James. This is, I think, our third lesson we've had from the book of James. Today we're in the second chapter, verses 14 through 26. James, as we've talked about previously, he was a half-brother to Jesus. A non-believer in the early part of his life, and after becoming an adult, and after Jesus' death and resurrection, he became a Christian and became one of the leaders in the early church there in Jerusalem. The theme of the lesson so far that we've had of James is pretty much, you can narrow it down to something like words are cheap. And they're empty if not backed up with actions. And that's one of the things that James reiterates throughout his book as he wrote to the 12 churches that were scattered throughout the area, that you had to back up what you said. You could talk the talk, but you also needed to walk the walk. And we'll read that scripture here just in a minute. James was blunt, and as you read his book, he gets right to the point, doesn't beat around the bush. Unlike many today everybody wants to be politically correct or as close to it as they can be, and sometimes they mold the message or mold what they have to say to what, the loudest voices want. And I think of it sometimes that you ever gone to a restaurant and when they have the soup of the day, it varies from day to day. You go to an ice cream parlor, the flavor of the day, that changes from day to day. And I sometimes think that's how people are as far as their opinions, what they want to, say or hear, that changes. And we talked about this a week or so ago, but who would have thought just a few short months ago that you'd ever see a climate that we have today to where we're tearing down statues of Christopher Columbus and many other people. I mean, maybe some of them, there's some valid reasons. Some of them seem very superficial to me. And again, it just seems to go right along with that's what the people are wanting right now. And James was more to, he's going to tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. I think that comes to Sunday school class and even in worship service, sometimes with the sermon or with the lesson. Sometimes people tend to say, well, I think that's what everybody wants to hear, or that's what everybody believes, whether it's right or wrong. That's where I'm going to tailor what I'm going to say to. But James wasn't like that. Like I said, he's kind of blunt and would get right to the point. Well, let's go ahead and read the scriptures. As I said earlier, out of James, the second chapter, it says, "What doth it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith and have not works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, Depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit? Even so faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. Yea, a man may say, Thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works. Thou believest that there is one God, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works, when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seest thou how faith wrought with his works, and by works was faith made perfect? And the scripture was fulfilled, which saith, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. Ye see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Likewise also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works, when she had received the messengers and had sent them out another way. For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. What good is it to talk faith, but no works ensue? That's, when it gets right down to it, that's what James is saying. True faith transforms our conduct as well as our thoughts. If our lives remain unchanged, we don't truly believe the truths we claim to believe. And that's just a short little statement there they got out of one of the study guides this week. Very to the point, I think, and tells it like it is. If our lives don't change, if our hearts don't change, and we don't feel compassion for other people, obviously our faith is dead. He gives an example of that when he talks about if you come upon someone who's lacking proper clothing, maybe in the wintertime they're wearing a t-shirt, they don't have a coat. And it says also destitute of daily food. Somebody that needs clothing, someone that needs food. And what James is saying, you come across a person like that, and you say unto them, depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled. Another way of saying that is, well, bye, have a good day, stay warm, eat well. Or you may even say, and feel justified by saying this, you may say, may God warm you and fill you up. That sounds nice. It's a good sentiment. But are they warm? Are they filled? Have we done anything to help them out of the situation they're in? I think as James gives this example, the one that's giving that response to the person that's hungry and ill-clothed, they're avoiding any kind of personal responsibility to act to meet that need. And basically what he's saying, what have you accomplished? And what good does that do? You know, sometimes people justify today not helping someone is, well, I'm sure someone else will. There's someone else that's going to take care of that. I don't need to do that. And that's the point James is getting there. Don't rely on the fact that someone else is going to take care of it. If we have that attitude to where we're going to say, well, go on, God's going to take care of you, you'll be fine. How do we know the next person's not going to say the same thing? And the person after that, and the person after that. I think you kind of get the idea. It could just go on and on and on. Why not try to give them some clothing? Why not give them something to eat? In that way, you're acting upon that faith. And again, James is saying, what have you accomplished? And he even goes so far as to say, faith without works is dead. Now, over in our book, on page 75 and 76, our writer says, biblical faith involves trust that produces commitment, which in turn bears fruit. If the fruit is missing, the logical conclusion is that the faith is not biblical. It is a superficial kind of faith. He goes on to write, faith will reveal itself in love and compassion for others, much as Jesus showed others when he lived among us. And that's true. That is what's going to be shown. It says also, faith will not just feel for those in need, it also will act to help meet their needs. It will not just pray for someone in need, it will help be the answer to that prayer. If faith only expresses itself in feelings and wishes, it is dead. That's what our writer in the book wrote. That's what James is trying to get across to the people as he wrote to them and to the people today as we read that. You have to have the works. It's only going to come from the faith. While it is true that our good deeds can never earn salvation, true faith always results in a changed life and good deeds. Again, going back to the hypothetical that James put out there, if you're in that situation when you're hungry and you're cold, Do you want someone just to say, well, go on, I'll pray for you, and God will see that you get something to eat maybe? Or would you rather have them say, here, take my coat, or here, we have an extra coat, you take that, or take this blanket, or here, let me fix you a sandwich. Let me take you somewhere and get you something to eat. Which would you rather have? I think we can look at it that way, turn it around and, turn the tables, so to speak. Our lesson writer also says, faith is like the wind. It is invisible to the eye. And this is on page 76. However, the fact that we cannot detect it with the eye does not make it any less real. And I think this is what's interesting to me. He says the viruses and bacteria that make us sick may not be visible, but we know they are real. We feel their effects. And as I read that, I wonder when this lesson was written. Was it way last winter? Was it last fall? Or has it been since we've had the COVID-19? Because he makes the good point there. We may not see that virus out there, but I think we all are going to agree there is something there. And I think that's the scary part of it, isn't it? You don't know where it's at. If I told you the COVID-19 is lurking around over in the gymnasium, and when we dismiss here in a little bit, how many of you are going to go to the gymnasium? But we don't know, do we? Or if I said the COVID is lurking around a particular restaurant in Jonesboro, and then I said, hey, you want to go with me up there to that restaurant? I got a good special on fried chicken today. How many of you would go with me, right? But again, we don't know, and that's the scary part. You can't see it. But I thought it was interesting that he used that as an example, considering what we're going through in our society today. Now, he goes on in the next few verses, talking about the one person maybe saying, I have faith, and another person saying, I have works, and they're separated. They're not the same. And James is saying, no, it's all one and the same. If you have faith, you're going to have works. If you have true faith, you are going to have works. He goes on to say, you say you believe in the one God, but who else believes in God? Satan, the devils, the demons, and they tremble. Over in one of the study guides, it says, there is no confusion among the forces of Satan about who God is and the extent of his power. They know. Because they recognize him, they tremble. The person who claims faith without works is less responsive to God than a demon. Remember earlier when I was saying that James was kind of blunt and to the point? I don't see any way of getting around that. That's what he's saying. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And when you think about it in that context, it is kind of troubling. You've got the person say, I believe in God and I have faith, but if they're not showing any works, do they really? Even the devil believes in God. He believes there is a God, and he knows his power, his authority, and his strength. And James goes on to give some examples of Abraham and Rahab about faith and actions working together. And from page 78 in our book, I'm going to read what that writer says about those two individuals. It says, James provides two Old Testament illustrations of what true faith looks like. Abraham believed God to such a degree that he was willing to do what God asked of him concerning the sacrifice of his son. Rahab, the woman who hid the two Jewish spies in Jericho, was willing to risk her life because she believed the Jewish God was all-powerful and would conquer the land for his people. Both Abraham and Rahab produced great works on behalf of God, but they did so because of their great faith in God. And then James, as far as our lesson goes today, and there in verse 26, he winds it up, repeating himself basically, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also." Unless the Word is changing us inside and out, in our heart and our mind to speak and act, our faith is no faith at all. And that's what James is saying there. If we don't change the way we act, and have works, we don't really have the faith.